Welcome to a new episode.
Hello and welcome back to the Copper Connection podcast with me, as always, your host, Chris Bailey. And today we're diving into the foundations of everything we do as plumbers. We're going into the health and safety and industry practices. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You want to get your hands on the tools, you want to be bending copper and installing bathrooms. But listen closely, this unit is the backbone of your career. It's not just about staying out of trouble with the law, it's about making sure you, your colleagues and your customers go home safe every single night. From your level 2 exam, this unit is the heavy hitter. It covers the rules of the game, the hazards you will face on site and exactly how to handle yourself when things go wrong. So grab a brew, find a quiet spot and let's walk through the world of site safety together. We're going to structure this like a day on a major construction project. We'll start with the paperwork and the laws that govern our industry, move on to the hazards we find when we step onto the site, look at the tools and substances we use, and finally we'll cover what happens in an emergency. So, the rules of the game. Before you even pick up a spanner, you need to understand the legal framework. In the UK, we split health and safety guidance into two groups. You need to remember that statutory publications are mandatory. That means they're law. Think of the Health and Safety at Work Act 1924, often called HASWA. On the other hand, non-statutory publications like British Standards or Manufacturing Instructions are therefore guidance. They are best practice, but they aren't the law itself. If you see the word statutory, think legal requirement. If you see non-statutory, think guidance. The big one you must know is the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. This is the main piece of legislation in the UK. It's unique because it's about people and activities, not just the building you're working in. Under HASWA, if a company has more than 5 employees, they must have a written health and safety policy. Now, let's talk about your roles versus your boss's role. Your employer has to provide a safe working environment, carry out risk assessments and provide you with the correct PPE free of charge. But you have a massive part to play too. You must take reasonable care of yourself and others, follow the safety policies and never mess around with safety equipment. If you see something dangerous, you have a legal duty to report it. Okay, managing the site. As we move on to the site, we encounter the Construction Design Management Regulations, or CDM. These are all about planning and management to make sure the site is safe from the moment the first brick is laid. Then we have the Electricity at Work Regulation. As a plumber, you'll be working around electronics constantly. Think showers and immersion heaters. You must be competent to do this work. Competent means you have been trained, tested, and you hold a certificate to prove it. For electrical safety, remember that portable appliances like your circular saw need pack testing. On a construction site, pack testing usually happens every 3 months. Now let's take a look at some of the hazards and substances you may come across. Now, imagine you open your van and you look at your supplies. You've got flux, solder, cleaning materials, and maybe some solvent cement. This brings us to COSHH, the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health. COSHH is there to stop you from getting ill from the things you work with. You'll see the symbols on the containers, the red diamonds and black images. Don't make it a common mistake. Don't just look at the symbol. Read the signal words like toxic or flammable. Toxic means poisonous and nauseous means something, usually a gas, that is very harmful. Let's talk about specific hazards. Asbestos. This is a massive topic for your exam. Asbestos was used in buildings heavily between 1940s and 1980s, but you should be very wary of any buildings built before 2000. You might find it's an old flue pipe, water tank, or even Artex sealants. There are 3 main types: white, chrysolite, brown, amosite, and blue celandite. If you suspect you've found asbestos, stop work immediately and tell your supervisor. Never try to move it yourself. It must be handled by a licensed contractor and double bagged for disposal. Next, we're going to head up the ladder. The working at heights regulation apply when there's a risk of fall that could cause injury. Before you climb, you have to consider if there's a way of doing this job from the ground. If not, you need the right equipment. Calculation to remember: when using extendable ladders, you must use the 4-to-1 rule. This means for every 4 meters you go up, the base of the ladder must come out 1 meter from the wall. This creates a 75-degree angle. So if you are working at height at 6 meters, you divide 6 by 4, which gives you 1.5 meters. That's how far the base should be from the wall. If you get a question in your exam that mentions inspection, think of short-term access like a ladder. If it mentions replacement or rectification, think longer-term access like mobile scaffold towers. When you're moving heavy boilers or radiators, remember the manual handling operation regulation. There is no safe weight to lift, but you should always use the kinetic lifting technique. Keep your back straight and bend your knees. Think of the acronym TILE: task, individual, load and environment. The common mistake is never lift a heavy load alone just because you're in a rush. Wait for help and use a mechanical aid. Fire is a constant risk for us because we use blowtorch. To have fire, you need the fire triangle: oxygen, fuel and heat. Take one away and the fire goes away. You need to know the fire classes for your exam. Class A is solids like wood and paper, Class B is liquids, Class C is gases. Remember, A, B, C is solid, liquid, gas. As a plumber, you'll likely be using propane, which comes in a red cylinder. When you're soldering, you should always have a CO2 fire extinguisher nearby. CO2 extinguishers have the black label. Never use a water extinguisher, red label, on an electrical fire. When setting up your LPG equipment, remember that the threads are left-handed for safety. Always test for leaks using leak detector fluid. Never ever use a naked flame to check for a gas leak. Before you touch any electrical component, you must perform a safe isolation procedure. This is a critical step-by-step process that often appears in your exam. First, you identify the circuit and tell the customer you're turning the power off. Use a voltage test indicator to check the circuit is live. Then isolate the circuit at the fuse board or consumer unit. Lock it off and put a label on it so no one else turns it back on. Now, retest with your voltage indicator to make sure it's dead. Finally, check your tester on a known source, like a proving unit, to make sure the tester itself hasn't failed. Common mistake on this step is skipping the proving part. If your tester is broken, it might show a circuit is dead when it's actually alive. Sometimes the job takes us underground or into tight spots. If you're in an excavation deeper than 1.2 meters, it must be supported to prevent collapse. Watch out for flooding and falling objects. Confined spaces include lofts, pits, or even inside large tanks. The biggest danger here is the lack of oxygen or build-up of poisonous gases. Never work in a confined space alone. You need a top man or a looker so someone outside can raise the alarm if you get into trouble. And finally, let's talk about accidents. Accidents is an unforeseen, unplanned event. If someone is injured, you need to act fast. For a minor burn, cool the area under cold running water for at least 10 minutes. For a minor cut, clean it and cover it. If there's a serious injury or a near miss, it needs to be reported under RIDDLE, the Report of Injuries, Diseases and Dangerous Occurrence Regulation. Every incident, no matter how small, must be recorded in the site accident book. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this week's episode of the Copper Connection podcast. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the 4-to-1 ladder rule to the different types of asbestos and the steps of safe isolation. These aren't just facts to memorise for a test, these are the tools that will keep you safe throughout your career. You have the knowledge, you understand the responsibilities, and you know what to look for. Take that confidence into your exam, you've put the work in, and you're gonna be ready to pass. Thank you for listening to the Copper Connection podcast. Stay safe out there, and we will see you on the next episode.
We'll be back next week. In the meantime, please subscribe and thanks for listening.